Israel says it will step up strikes on Gaza ahead of its expected ground assault as citizens gather in Tel Aviv to mourn the victims of the Hamas militant group's attacks.
A candlelight vigil and protest in Tel Aviv for the 1,400 Israelis killed since the Hamas militant group launched attacks on southern Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's military continue to bombard the Gaza Strip and say it will step up its assault on the territory in preparation for a looming counter-offensive.
אנחנו צריכים להיכנס בתנאים הטובים ביותר, תוך כדי גם הסתכלות על כלל הדברים שקורים בהערכת המצב שלנו, וכרגע מה שאנחנו עושים זה נכנסים בתנאים הטובים ביותר לשלב הבא למלחמה.
The Palestinian Health Ministry says at least 4,650 people have died in Gaza. Syrian state media says at least one civilian has died after Israel struck airports in war-torn Damascus and Aleppo. Meanwhile, Israel continues to trade fire with the Hezbollah militant group on the border with Lebanon.
Huge crowds gathered in countries across Europe on Saturday in support of Palestinians and the war-ravaged territory. For the second consecutive weekend, thousands of demonstrators took to the streets of London, voicing an anti-war message. In Rome, hundreds called for a stop to Israeli airstrikes on Gaza. Waving Palestinian flags, the demonstrators marched with the cry of Free Palestine and held banners that read, "No peace until we get freedom." Despite a ban on demonstrations issued by Berlin police, several hundred pro-Palestinian demonstrators marched unhindered through the streets of the German capital. Police on site surrounded the demonstrators and finally allowed the procession to move on. In response to a call by several associations, around 100 people gathered near the old port of Marseille in southern France to call for peace between Israel and the Palestinian people.
This is what's left of a Ukrainian mail depot in the Kharkiv region. At least 6 people were killed in a Russian missile strike on the facility late on Saturday. Authorities say 7 more are in critical condition. This after the International Commission for Missing Persons announced some 30,000 Ukrainian civilians are still missing as Moscow's assault drives on. The chief of the intergovernmental organization says she's working with Kyiv to help bring missing civilians home.
There are also Ukrainians missing since 2014, so the numbers are huge, and they're growing every day. And the numbers are, in fact, so large that it exceeds the capability of any one state to conduct investigations into such a high number of missing persons.
On Friday, Ukraine said Russia has committed some 2,500 environmental crimes since its full-scale invasion began. According to Kyiv's environment minister, Moscow is responsible for 55 billion euros worth of damages so far in 2023.
A court in Iran has sentenced 2 female journalists to up to 7 years in prison on national security charges over cases linked with the Mahsa Amini protests. Nilufar Hamidi and Ilahi Mohammadi have been behind bars for over a year due to their coverage of Amini's death following her arrest by Iran's so-called morality police in September last year. In May, the United Nations awarded them both its top prize for press freedom for their, quote, commitment to truth and accountability.
Traffic at Slovenia's border with Croatia after Ljubljana introduced border checks with its Balkan neighbour and Hungary. The move, announced on Thursday, is set to last at least 10 days and was effective from Saturday. Slovenia's government says the checks are necessary to prevent terrorism and organised crime and comes amid recent Islamist attacks in Western Europe and the Israel-Hamas war.
Mejna kontrola na teh mejnih prehodih se izvaja ciljno, kar pomeni, da je usmerjena v odkrivanje oseb, ki bi lahko povzročale oziroma ki predstavljale tveganje za javni red in bi lahko izvrševale teroristične grožnje Republiki Slovenije.
Under the European Union's Schengen rules, member states like Slovenia or Italy can temporarily reintroduce border controls if internal security or public policy are at risk. Denmark and Sweden are also expected to introduce similar restrictions.